Okay, we are live on YouTube.
Mhm.
Well, congratulations, everybody. You're all superstars now. I'd like to get started by having some of our alumni co-hosts introduce themselves. Sheila, thanks for joining us on behalf of City of San Leandro and Engineering and Transportation Department. Maybe Tamana, you can go first on sharing a little bit about yourself and your maybe project you did in our program and why you have interest in this, and Mimrai as well, Nick, and then Tati, maybe in that order.
Hi, I'm Tamana, and I've been with PilotCity for about a year. I was a former coding intern, and my original project was using Seed's Smart Citizen Kit to check the air quality in specific areas to help people with asthma and other noise sensitivity and air quality problems. And I'd like to work with San Leandro because I feel like prototyping a bike lane and everything within the city is a really good idea, and it'll help lots of people in the area.
Hi, my name is Rumai. I was also a former coding intern, and my project was originally about Kaiser, and it was entertaining people in the hospitals because we know that being in hospital isn't very entertaining. So it's a way that they can like pass time, and I would love to work with you because prototyping is a one word that caught my eye whenever I saw a description, as we get to go there and we can also see how it is.
Okay, so hi, my name is Nicholas. I was in the 2019 PilotCity program, and I worked on a autonomous bus to help kids get from, or the idea of an autonomous bus to get kids to point A to point B due to schools having different electives than Antioch. So the two schools were Antioch and Deer Valley, and they both had different electives. So it'd be for juniors and seniors to take a ride over to that school pretty much. And I saw, why not start small with transportation instead of starting with, a whole bus.
Hi, I'm Tatiana Lopez, and I worked on the project with Nick. So we were on the same team together. And yeah, I just saw engineering and transportation, and then I read about, like the bike lane, and I was like, this sounds pretty cool. So kind of just interested to see what's going on.
All right, and maybe Sheila, you can give a little short introduction in your front, and then what I'm going to do is share a little bit about our program before we get started with the conversation.
Great. So a little bit about myself. I just recently joined the City of San Leandro as a principal engineer, December 1st. So I'm about 2 months in with the San Leandro team. So I oversee the land use department, and that includes development projects, encroachment permits for any contractors working on our streets, as well as the transportation engineering department. So that's the group that I oversee. But I was previously with the city of Fremont for 16 years, mainly focusing on transportation. I currently still live in Fremont, but I actually grew up in the city of San Leandro. So I'm so proud to be kind of back home. I went to Thomas Jefferson Elementary School. I went to Bancroft Middle School and San Leandro High School. So really excited to have this project to create this Class 4 protected bike lanes to encourage walking and biking in the streets that I kind of roamed in when I was growing up. But a little bit of my background, I'm a civil and transportation engineer. I went to Chabot College for 2 years and then transferred to UCLA for the last 2 years. Got my degree in my bachelor's degree in civil engineering, and then continued on to get my master's in public administration. So really interested in working in local government, working with our communities. But I also have my license in civil engineering and transportation engineering. So with that background and experience, kind of led me back to be prepared for this principal engineer role in San Leandro.
All right. So I'm going to share a little bit about our program to give some people some context. So our program is a early workforce program where we partner with employers and we scope out projects of value to those employers. And then we pass them over to students across this jurisdiction in the area to solve it. And they develop projects typically during classroom time, as well as part of clubs and outside of school as well now. And they can essentially automatically qualify for internships with those employers to further execute on those projects. And these content recording sessions that we're having, the specific podcast with employers, co-hosted by our alumni here, is our opportunity to have content that students can watch, so that when they're in the program for City of San Leandro Engineering and Transportation, there's context, right? There's information. There's deeper information than just a bunch of resources we share with them or just the blurb of the project. And so we'll get into some background on Sheila, get some background on Keith Cook. I see him just popped in. We'll pop him in a second. And we'll also get into the kind of the project scope and some of the devils and the details of it, right? I'm sure there's a lot of details. And this is a really a great collection of people, because we have two students who are from Fremont and then someone who's worked in City of Fremont and in transport. And one topic I really like to get into is Fremont's, traffic problems when school was in place, and the amount of traffic that people had and the dangers of it, right? And that's kind of part of what we're discussing here today. So super excited. But before that, I think we got Keith Cook joining us now. And I'd love for Keith to be able to introduce a little bit about himself. So let us know when you're ready to do that, Keith. He might be setting up his video or whatnot. So Keith, feel free to pop in with your video when you're ready to turn on your mic as well. So I'm going to kick off the discussion. It's a very fun project, Sheila. We have never had a project like this in our program, where students can actually get their hands on prototyping real solutions for their own urban environment. And so I like to kind of kick it off with you. You kind of went through this track of going to school at San Leandro, going through some exploration while you're in community college, I'm sure, and then transferring to UCLA and getting into the space of transport. So tell us more about your origin story. How did you think about, your early days of your career? And, how did you end up here?
Wow, that's some very deep questions there. So transportation is just something, that, you get exposed to at a very early age when you're, playing with cars, or even just going out and about with your parents. Oh, should we cut to Keith real quick?
Sure, why not? Keith, welcome.
Yes, it took me a little bit to connect. My internet has been a little bit weak today, so I had to do the combination phone internet, combination. So here I am.
All right, why don't you introduce yourself? Give the world a synopsis on Keith Cook.
All right, great. Hi, my name is Keith Cook, and I'll give the short version. I grew up in Sacramento, California, and had 3 sisters. So it was a busy, noisy house. And went to UC Davis for undergraduate education in civil engineering there at UC Davis. And then I did my graduate work in structural engineering, structural mechanics, or civil engineering at UC Berkeley. And let's see, even more abbreviated story. I've been with the city of San Leandro now since 1994. So I'll let you guys all do the math. And been working in the engineering department. Really kind of enjoyed the ability to work on projects that we all get to live and see and use and be a part of in our own community, because I actually live in San Leandro as well. So that's the short version. So yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. Won't get into the age discussion, but near majority of my
all
life.
before you all
so.
were alive, that's for sure.
Well, you're I was this tall, but
Yeah.
Sheila, how about back to you on your origin story?
So origin story of how I found myself in this field. So I was born in the Philippines. So I came over when I was 8 or 9 years old. But story I have is I was actually in a collision. I was run over by a vehicle in the Philippines. So I like to think there was something in safety. I was kind of born or already aligned in the transportation safety world. But growing up in San Leandro, I had a single parent and my mom. I rode AC Transit a lot in order to get around. And so that was my early exposure into public transportation. We used BART often. And then going into adulthood, when you can drive, I just found myself stuck in the car. I spent a lot of time sitting in traffic. I recall leaving the school parking lot in San Leandro High School. You're so eager to be able to drive. You have your driver's license, and then school releases, and you're sitting in the parking lot just trying to leave for a good 15 minutes. That was the way the school was laid out then. So, and I remembered sitting there thinking, gosh, this striping in this parking lot sure could be improved. I don't know who does that, but it really should be, something should be done over here. So those are the kind of the early influences. And again, getting an education at UCLA. Also, I was stuck in traffic there, just to get to work then was a 2-hour daily commute. And so I was already kind of gearing towards a career in transportation because I had so many issues and concerns and maybe ideas of how to at least try to help combat this issue. So in general, those were my how I came to be in the transportation field.
So it was really that's really interesting that you actually had an incident when you were really young, and so I'm sure there's some subconscious purpose there. But did you have a conscious like aggregation of all those experiences around your transport kind of debacles to get to the point where you actually discovered that you want to do something in this field? Was that how you decided to do the space of studying in this space?
Yeah, I think again, those are those things you don't really realize until you kind of look back, in your life. Then I found myself gravitating towards kind of giving back to the community and kind of making sure that nobody else experiences the same things, and also now becoming a parent myself. I have children also roaming around on their bikes and walking. Those are things that I want to ensure that their own safety as well.
Great. Okay. And you kind of went on this route where you studied and you went into a particular career path, and I'm assuming you landed in the city of Fremont at some point. I don't know if it was before your first kind of gig or after, but you eventually made your way back home, metaphorically. And I'd love to know how you kind of thought about this kind of path you took, and then this kind of circle back to the city that you didn't necessarily grow up in, right? Because you were born in the Philippines, but a place that you were raised in, certainly, right? So tell us about that story.
Yeah, so I still have family in San Leandro. So coming from UCLA, where I was ready to, start my career, and thinking in the future where I want to raise my family. And I had planned to come back to the Bay Area at some point. I prefer to raise a family around my family. So the opportunity presented itself with the city of Fremont. And so that's the closest I could get to San Leandro, right? And so, when I started in the city of Fremont, I found myself, in a city that was also growing, lots of transportation issues. So I was really able to contribute to a lot of projects, and that allowed me to set some roots, have a family. I have 2 kids now in the 4th and 8th grade. And that really kind of forces you, at least it forced me to stay put and then really work on my career, because as an engineer, you receive your bachelor's degree, and then you move on to get your professional engineering license. It takes about 2 or 4 years of process to make so that you accumulated the experience to make you eligible to become an official professional engineer. And then I went on again to complete my master's degree and then a traffic engineering license. So I really kind of worked on myself as a professional while keeping an eye on what's going on in San Leandro. Keith and his team were still already building San Leandro. Both Fremont and San Leandro had the reputation to be the progressive cities when it comes to transportation. So I was keeping a track on what Keith and his team was doing. And, the opportunity presented itself. Keith had a position open last year. I actually had been eyeing it for a while when I saw that there was a vacancy. And, last year, 2020, was a really scary year, right? There were so many thoughts that were coming through my mind that, the kids are at school, at home, maybe everybody should stay put, maybe no changes, kind of just hunker down. Maybe this isn't a good time to make any career changes. So I let the opportunity pass, and I said, hey, maybe if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And then the opportunity came back up, the position opened again. And then I had the courage to say, why not? It's already a crazy year. We're already at the end of 2020. It's going to be better in 2021. And it's going to be better because I've now joined the City of San Leandro team. And that's how it worked out. So December 1st, I officially started back in my hometown of San Leandro.
Wow, phenomenal story, and welcome back. I'd like to pass it over to Keith now to talk about his. So just Keith, you've had a long career with City of San Leandro and really a veteran, at what you're doing now, not just for transport engineering, but for the city specifically. So you have a lot of history and background on the city, right? And specifically in this space. So give us a little, tour of, how you progress from maybe a high school leap to college leap to your licensing leap to the city. Tell us about that journey, and then let's get into some background on the City of San Leandro and the engineering department specifically.
Sure. Well, when I was in college, I was fortunate enough to get some internships that were really kind of eye-opening. One of my first was with the Department of Water Resources, and it was a lot of fun. It was a summer internship. In fact, I could go back during the breaks, and so definitely recommend getting internships. And in fact, hopefully we'll get back to that, having internships as well. But and that's what we're going to be talking about. Actually, we have a couple of intern positions that we'll be talking about. And so that kind of got me hooked into engineering. We were doing roads. We used to do them all by hand. There was not as many computers and things like that. In fact, I still had an abacus in the office when I was there. So, but you guys don't even know what an abacus is. Oh my god!
No idea.
And they had slide rules too, but that was I missed out on using slide rules. So and then and that was my freshman year, and then I worked there a number of years, and then while I was getting closer to my last year at Davis, I got a job internship at the Bechtel Corporation, and it was kind of like, wow, this is it really kind of reawakened a dream I had. And I tell this story when I go to the school and talk about my little journey, that we all have like dreams of what we think our life is going to be, and it's really important to have that kind of dreams and goals. And I can remember watching this show called The Family Affair, and the show was one of the main characters, the father. He was a bridge engineer. He was a civil engineer. He was a bridge engineer, and he designed bridges all over the world. And he lived in New York City in a penthouse apartment, and he had a butler. And I said, man, if that is the lifestyle of a bridge engineer, man, that's got to be for me. And so, so then since then, I was always kind of like, wow, yeah, they get to go all over the world. You build these beautiful structures that people use every day and admire. And said, bridge engineering, could be that thing. And it's funny how those little things stick in your mind. So I had that in the back there. And so I go through Davis, and I get a job at Bechtel, and it was like, summer job at Bechtel. And said, oh, wow, this, working around the world is actually a real thing. And we were working on a airport in Saudi Arabia. I was doing that during the summer. I said, okay, it might actually be real. And so as I was going along, I realized I needed to get a graduate degree. And so I ended up getting a fellowship to go to grad school to study structures, because obviously structures are what, bridge engineers, are usually structural engineers. So I was still kind of going along that path. And, but I ended up getting this fellowship with the Sandia National Laboratories, which is a weapons laboratory out in Livermore. It's kind of a sister facility to the Lawrence Livermore Nuclear Labs. And I was doing structural engineering work, but back then it was about the Star Wars laser system. And then, I don't even know if they discontinued that. I don't think they ever, followed up, or if it's still top secret. So I don't know. I had to get a top secret clearance for that job. So I always joke that I got a top secret clearance, but and so I was doing that, but that kind of took me away from the structural engineering that I was interested in terms of bridges and buildings. So I ended up after they paid for a grad school, so that was a good thing. And I stayed there a year or two, and I tried it out, and I said, we try something else. So I actually ended up working at Chevron. And it was kind of a nice transition in their engineering department. And their engineering department, worked on projects all over the world as well. So that was kind of exciting. Worked on different refineries, and instead of doing bridges, you're doing pipe bridges, a little bit better. And so I did that for a couple of years, and actually worked on a construction project out at the Richmond refinery. Building some new treatment facilities. So that was really pretty cool. And so I realized definitely the civil, structural engineering is the way for me. So I ended up one other job after that was with this consulting firm called CH2 & Hill. And that's where I got to design my first bridge. And so actually design, at least two bridges that I can remember. One bridge is the Tassajara Creek Bridge out in the Pleasanton area. Well, actually, it's like Dublin. I think it's Dublin Road. If you're heading out towards the sheriff's facility out there, there is a now I can't remember the name of the type of the bridge, but there was a plate type bridge that I got to design out there, and so that was pretty cool. And then my favorite bridge, or at least the most impressive one, is the Stephen Boulevard. Actually, there's a couple other ones that probably I was more supplementary, but this one actually got the design was the Stephen Boulevard overcrossing across IA-80. So I get to see that one every time I travel down to Fremont and beyond. So that's pretty cool to actually have design a bridge that gets built and that you actually get to travel. And so stayed at Chevron on CH Tomb Hill for a number of years. Goes up and down with the economy, but what I realized I really liked doing was project managing and being part of the communities that get those type of projects. And so I ended up with the city of San Leandro and, worked on all kind of different projects. Are you guys, are you guys from San Leandro or?
Yes, we got some folks
communities
here. So these are co-hosts and alumni that you missed that piece. And Tamana, Minmai are from Fremont.
Okay.
And
So,
Tati and Nick are from Antioch.
Okay, cool. So, well, then you went across Stevenson Boulevard probably. So, so we worked on a couple of projects. Probably one, Sheila may have been there when no, you were gone. The down at the San Leandro High School, we worked on a project where we put in a scramble traffic signal at the San Leandro and Bancroft Avenue and 136 intersection. So that was one of the projects that we worked on. Worked on several projects out of our water pollution control plant, putting in new facilities there, new tanks and new pumping equipment. Let's see, what else? Fire stations. Worked on a couple of the fire stations in town in San Leandro. And so, yeah, you get involved with kind of the local projects that we all get to live with, and you tend to notice the things around you more. And so one of those projects is just the regular paving of our streets. And that's a continuous type of thing. And it kind of really is kind of the backbone of your city. And so it paved a lot of streets in San Leandro. And one of the things that has evolved over the time is how we have changed the use of our transportation system, and in particular our roads, how we've kind of expanded how they can be used. So before, everybody just designed roads, and the main thing that they were considering that they were going to accommodate were just cars and trucks. But as we've evolved over these last years, people are realizing that we need to make sure that we accommodate all modes of travel. So not only are we talking about cars and trucks, we're also making sure buses run well, but then we're also talking about people and how people get around town. So, and that's what it really comes down to, is making sure that if you're a pedestrian or a bicyclist or you're walking to transit, that those roads are functional for those people as well, for people using alternative modes of transportation as well. And so that's become one of our big focuses currently is, well, how do we make our streets safe for everybody, and especially for pedestrians and bicyclists? And it's a big deal now, right? We're all, kind of staying at home because of this pandemic. And so a lot of us are walking more and riding our bikes, and, we're not traveling as far because we're working from home. So we don't need to, travel miles and miles. And so really, we really need to make our cities accommodate, all of this need for traveling in a smaller scale. And so that's really one of our challenges for this future. And in fact, kind of the big project that we're working on here in San Leandro. I don't know, Sheila, if you got a chance to talk about it. And kind of exciting thing that I think we're working on is how do we change our roads so that they accommodate all users, and in particular, Bancroft Avenue here in San Leandro and William Street. And both of these streets go by literally, like 75% of the schools in San Leandro. And so as you can imagine, they get a lot of traffic. But we're really looking at how we can change these roads so that they better accommodate, and in particular, bicyclists, because I really think that that's going to be the new wave. Scooters, electric scooters, I think are a great kind of personal mode of transportation, but I think electric bikes can even be a more widely used mode of transportation. And I like the ideas of electric bikes because it makes bicycling, it kind of equalizes it for everybody. And so, if you can ride a bike, that's a good start. Well, most of us can. And then now, that you have an electric bike, you can keep up with, pretty much everybody. So it kind of just makes it like, well, yeah, maybe I would use a bike to, go a mile or two to the local store. Or if, go to school, that would be great, right? I mean, most people live within a mile or two or three, the most, to their high school, and even closer to their middle and elementary school. If people converted those trips from cars to bicycles, I mean, that would be fantastic. The congestion would go way down. Greenhouse gases would go way down. We could really revolutionize what's going on in our cities. And I mean, just the reduction in traffic, you would notice it. I mean, you notice it now, right? Everybody's at home now. If you go out during the day, the traffic is, a little bit calmer. People are driving a little fast. I mean, that's another product of everything. But the traffic is not as bad. And so that's what we're trying to get to, is that, hey, let's get out of our car and, let's use our scooter or bicycle to get to school and work. And so that's kind of our big focus, for work right now, and really excited about that. Go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, for sure. There's this kind of I feel like there is a chicken and egg shift going on with transport, because it's infrastructure, it's pavement, it's things you pour and it stays there for a long time and you can't dig it up too easy. And then what's it called? Bird comes out with their scooter, and then now it's gone, and now there's a new tool, and so you got all these interesting platforms, that are changing mobility and transport means in society, but then you have this infrastructure that's pretty stagnant. So how has the volcanic, societal shift, where is it stabilizing right now when it comes to transportation and mobility? And why are we now ready, right, to enter another phase in how we prototype or create, these infrastructures like next generation bike lanes to adapt?
Well, that's what's really exciting. I mean, we're really at this point where we're kind of recreating our city. And, we've done it a little bit on certain projects. You start seeing, you've probably seen it in Fremont. Sheila, didn't you guys just do some class 4 bike lanes down? Was it on Paseo Padre Parkway or something like that? You start to see that we're kind of reworking our environment, and man, that's going to really go to a global scale. Everything is going to get re-envisioned, and so it's really an exciting time to be in that creative process of saying, well, how could our streets be different? I mean, when you think about it, I mean, streets are like one of our biggest facilities that we have in a city. So, for example, the value of building our streets in our city, we're $440 million. That's how much the streets are worth just in San Leandro. And, if you got bigger cities with more streets, I mean, it's a super valuable asset. And so, but also it takes up a lot of space. Just look at the picture that I'm sitting in. There's a road there, and then there's a parking lot. Look at all that space that we devote to cars and vehicles, and we're not even. I mean, we just park our pieces of steel out there in the roads and take up all this space. And I got a little, 10 by 20 office, that I do all my work in, but my car takes up more space than my office.
So
it
is ridiculous, right? And
Yeah.
and there's so much more houses we can build, even if we can optimize some of those streets and so forth. So my question is for Sheila, like, what have you been seeing in the whether it's locally in terms of the United States, maybe, or maybe overseas, like what are we finding in as examples of this kind of next generation street infrastructures? Are you finding anything specific that you are being inspired by lately?
Yeah, I think when we look at other countries like Sweden and any other European countries, they're all shifting towards the use of the bicycles. They're getting out of their cars. You're looking at like Madrid, these huge town centers, and they're redesigning them for the pedestrians and the bicyclists. They're slowly pushing out the vehicles. And they've linked it that it's a health issue, that these crashes that are occurring, they're actually preventable. And if you try to at least attempt to get a few cars out of the way, that your crashes decrease. I mean, you have a healthier population. So that's kind of the shift in not only in the US, but yeah, in other countries.
So are you finding that cities and jurisdictions and places are implementing programs that transition us out of the use of infrastructure, street infrastructure, that's not just cars, right? Or not even just bikes, but going into infrastructure that allows more pedestrian urbanists to be able to congregate and transport each other? Are we finding anything around the world that's doing that?
Well, I'll jump in. The biggest thing I think, and I think it's kind of interesting how we've kind of progressed. We realized we needed to put in bike lanes. Then we realized, we need to give them a little bit more space. And then everybody kind of realized, you know what, we really just need to make sure that they're well separated and protected from vehicles so that everybody can feel comfortable. And I think people are realizing it. If you're in San Francisco, you see the couriers and they're riding their bikes. I mean, that's one level of riding, right? Those guys are fearless. They ride their bike. It's more like an extension of them. They're hopping. I mean, they can hop on their bikes and jump around cars. And I mean, literally, it's like they're running basically. But not everybody can ride a bike like that. And so in order to make our streets accessible to everybody, what we found that bike lanes aren't quite enough, but really what we need are protected bike lanes, really areas specifically for bikes so that everybody can feel comfortable, traveling along those major thoroughfares. And so, but that takes a big change in what people think a street is going to do, right? Now you may have to lose some parking for cars. Your access to your home may be different, or where you may be able to park has changed. And so, it really takes people opening their mind to a new way of living. And so we're almost like redesigning people's lives when you start changing the roads. It really can be a big change. And so I think that's one of the big things I think we're seeing in transportation. I mean, there's all the other things in terms of autonomous vehicles and connected vehicles and all those things like that. But the basic thing is, how we live with our roads is going to change.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what we're asking, right, from students in our program is to engage, co-create, and prototype a pop-up bike lane transport project on the corridors of San Leandro, of Bancroft and William Street with the local community to better serve its pedestrians, bikers, drivers, and urbanists. So essentially, this really encapsulate a a a really interesting set of parameters, right? We're asking students to engage people that use these streets, to potentially collaborate, and then also prototype pop up transport projects that serve as generally a bike lane, right? And there's a lot of compacted in there. So,
oh yeah,
how would someone approach? How would you dissect that yourself? That prompt, and how would you encourage someone to get started, and how they can get the most traction, on a project like that?
well, even for us, it's a big change, and so I think, I mean, it's going to be a challenge, but the big picture of it is that we're trying to change people's, hearts and minds about how they get around. And so, with all sales, it's all about, finding people's motivations, finding out what those motivations are, and then finding out those benefits, and selling it to the public to see if they're, if it's something that they're interested in, and then, getting their buy off on this new product of a new road and a new lifestyle. And so it's new for all of us. And I think that's what's going to be really exciting, is that we're really going to have to sit down and kind of prototype among ourselves as to, well, what would motivate me to ride my bike to school, or what would change my my mother's mind about walking to the store, or even riding a bike to school or to the store. So that's what we're going to be kind of prototyping, is the kind of messaging, and then the kind of rapidly prototyping messages out to the community to see how people respond, and tailoring those messages so that we get people's input and responses, and basically capture their hearts and their minds to thinking about making a change, a radical change in their life. And so that's what it's at least how I'm seeing it right now. I definitely don't have the answer, because, well, it's the first time for me too, but that's what makes it kind of exciting, is, hey, we're going to learn how to do something new, that is kind of revolutionary. So, and we want to be able to use all the tools that are out there to reach people, and to, get a message out that, we're ripe for a change. The time is now.
So I want to direct the question over to the Fremont, folks who live in Fremont, especially those who are students who live in Fremont. So Tamana Minmai, you are from Fremont, and I keep hearing that Fremont has a lot of schools, a lot of people driving along the streets, and when school is happening, there's a lot of incidents and issues. So does any of this speak to you all, and what are you imagining as potentially the issues that are parameters that students can solve for? And what are some, I don't know, rough draft ideas of what you think could be a solution around that, or any questions that you guys have as well?
I have a question. What are like the main problems that we're facing at this point? Is like safety? Is it space?
Definitely safety. I mean, and then the big challenge is, we're going to be changing the road out in front of people's homes, and some people, their parking is going to change. And I don't know if you guys, I'm sure everybody's neighborhood, we all have too many cars, right? And there's people have, cars in. Well, I don't know if they're in the garage. Most of them are not in the garage, unfortunately. But they cover the garage, the driveway, and the whole frontage of the house. and there's going to be some locations where we're not going to have that frontage available. So that's a big ask for a lot of people.
And just to add to that too is if once we build it, will people use it? Will they be comfortable giving up their vehicles? The parents allow their children to ride their bikes from point A to point B.
Yeah, all very good points. And one thing that I keep imagining is, I think, an example that Bike East Bay sent me where there's planters on the side to help beautify it a bit more, or maybe there's a bike lane that actually goes out a little bit more than usual, or maybe there's a parklet right in front of that kind of protected bike lane. So what are some of the possibilities, right, of what you're imagining? And what do you think can potentially fundamentally change, right, about bike lanes as we know it through this process?
Well, I think you're right. The features in the roadway, especially, how you separate those lanes, a lot of it is a function of what you have available in terms of space. But I think, there are all these opportunities for art, in terms of, if you're using barriers, and there's all these opportunities for landscaping and, doing, what do we call the green landscaping? And so there's some environmental benefits in terms of treating stormwater because you may have, this landscaping. So, those are some of the, the things that we can visualize now in our streets. Maybe they're green streets now with areas that will clean stormwater but also separate and protect bicyclists. And so we'll be kind of reimagining all the things that our streets do, all up and down the corridor. So that's one thing.
Yep. Any questions from Tati or Nick or Tamana on what you're hearing?
Yeah, I actually have a question. So are you guys looking for ways to separate the bike lanes from the actual streets, or create a different area specifically for bikes? That's what I'm confused about.
Well, most of it is kind of separating the bicyclists from the street within that same roadway area. So a lot of times you do that with planting areas, and sometimes you do it with barriers, kind of like what K-Rail look like. So those are some of the methods that people use. But the idea of separate trails or separate areas for bicyclists is a very appealing thing as well. And actually, that's going on as well as we're talking about it in terms of East Bay Greenway, and we already have the Bay Trail and the Ohlone Trail, and what's the one out in Pleasanton? I can't think of the name of it right now.
The Iron Horse. The
Iron Horse Trail. Yeah, so those are kind of some of the separate trails that are out there. But yes, we're going to try to figure out how we separate and really protect the bike lanes that are already on our street.
Just
so
to add
that's
to
a big deal.
Yeah. So you look at the roadway that's out there and what space we have available and how we can balance it out. There's parking, there's travel lanes, there's turn lanes, there's left turn lanes and right turn lanes. So it's in figuring out kind of like those puzzle pieces of what should stay and how we add a bicyclist and how do we best protect that bicyclist.
That's definitely a helpful process to understand. Again, Tati or Nick, feel free to jump in with any questions that you have. Anyone from the audience, feel free to line up some questions. One follow-up question that I have is, when it comes to Bancroft and William Street specifically, right? And maybe one of you guys can pick one or the other, right? Maybe Sheila can, or Keith can pick another one. What are the challenges of each one, and what are the opportunities of each corridor?
I could quickly start. So again, having roamed Bancroft Street for most of my childhood, I think it's a very special project in that compared to my previous bike projects, I've worked on major streets like Keith mentioned, Paseo Padre, Stevenson. These are huge collectors. What's exciting about Bancroft, it's a neighborhood street in that, like I mentioned, I went from Jefferson to Bancroft to San Leandro High School. That was like 12 years, right? If I did the math right, 12 years of the same corridor. And so these families are, this is their street. And this is their lifeline to go back and forth through all these schools. This is your childhood. So this is the community's great opportunity to design their own roadway that they'll be using frequently. And so the opportunities is that, the investment is going to be there. But I also see the challenges is, again, having the parents and the children be comfortable getting out of their vehicles, instead of getting dropped off in front of their school. So Bancroft is a little different than Williams, and I'll let Keith chime in on that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Bancroft has a smaller residential area. So, it's some of the same things Williams has a smaller residential area than Bancroft. So those items are the same, but we have to deal with some industrial areas as we go further east. And they'll be challenging. I think it's a matter of just making sure that everything fits. Those kind of engineering problems. And so, hopefully, we get out there and start trying to educate folks, using things like, TikTok and Instagram and Nextdoor and all the different, social medias, Facebook, all those type of things to really, have a coherent messaging out to folks to, consider something new, try it out. When we get like the demo project set up on those various corridors, we're going to, really try to push the message that you go try it out, drive by there, ride your bike through there, walk through there, all those things like that. And we're going to try to make it interesting, whether we do a human divider or, have some kind of TikTok challenge or something to really, see if people will take the time to check it out and give it a try. So that'll be part of the challenge and is getting that messaging out there and having people kind of participate in this new experience.
Tawana might have an additional question. Tawana might have an additional question asked. Tawana, you want to ask that?
Yeah, so how would you prototype this? Like, will you build this to get the internship using like materials and everything? Or like, do you expect us to create like a CAD design with research and measurements and then create it with San Leandro like once you get the internship?
You want to talk about that, Sheila? You're on mute. You're still on mute, Sheila.
Does that help? I asked you to unmute.
Well, keep on working on that mute. We're going to cover kind of it's going to be kind of a function of skills as well. But yes, we'll be doing some prototype designs of the actual, what the bike lanes will look like. And then we'll kind of brainstorm creative ways of how we can separate them. It could be anything from hay bales. Some people have used a human barrier where you get a lot of people and you just all are out there kind of hand in hand to kind of simulate it. You have a lot of precautions with that. but then, using different types of materials, and doing some painting and signage. We'll be covering like the gamut of whatever we can come up with to kind of make it a new and exciting place to go by and check out. So artwork is going to be, I think, a big component of that. If we use any barrier rails, it's a nice opportunity for linear art and the likes. So yeah, it's gonna, and then there's the, kind of the actual design portion. We'll probably see how well, fire vehicles can, get through intersections or make turns and things like that. So those will be some of our tests that we'll do. So we'll get the fire department out there with their trucks and, test out our designs and things like that. So
yeah, sorry,
it'll
just to
be interesting.
add to that, my mute button for some reason was not there. Yeah, just to add to that, so yeah, your imagination is what we're trying to tap into. Us engineers, we've tried out so many things, but again, this is a community-driven project, and so we want the community to really be part of the process, have their input of what they want to see, but also balance out of how can we maximize our safety using these barriers, and to add on to that, how can we afford to expand this all along Bancroft and all along Williams so that we can cover as much of these corridors as we can.
On the civic engagement front, I want to highlight that just a bit. What's the importance of the civic engagement piece for this? And what do you imagine as successful in terms of the civic engagement piece and the co-creation piece?
Well, I'll jump in, and I'm sure Sheila will follow up. I think it's probably the most important part of this project. I mean, this project is literally all about engaging people in the redesign of our city. I mean, civil engineering is all about, societies and cities and how we all live together. And so, this project is all about engaging all of these users of these roads, and which is all of us, and, getting their involvement and buy-off on making radical changes. So it's really all about, touching people, making sure they're aware that something is happening, making sure that they they won't say, "Well, I didn't know about that." We want it so that everybody knows about it. It's not like it's some mystery that just popped out of nowhere. It's like, "Oh yeah, I heard about that. I saw that." Whether, we're doing TV, we'll do probably some video and TV and, anything that we can to make sure that everybody is aware of it and they don't say, "Oh, I never heard of that." We want it to be like, I don't know, Disneyland, that everybody knows, Disneyland.
I can imagine that, like, the best people to civically engage with it are people who literally pass by that specific point that you're prototyping in, right? So
oh yeah,
putting out some kind of thing where, like, silently beep now if you like this, what you see so far, and people are beeping, and then you have like a sensor that like captures the sound of the beep, something like that, and the most beeps you get, it's like the a physical like button, on your
oh
yeah,
yeah,
like something that allows for it to be kind of its own engine, right, for civic engagement, perhaps, so that the data is coming in a smart way instead of just kind of shooting from the hip and seeing what happens.
Yeah,
definitely.
Exactly. I wanted to just add that that's why we're tapping into these minds that have probably come up with ideas that us traditional engineers, on top of that, we're local government. We only have so many ways to be able to engage with the community.
So I'm going to cap the conversation because we're heading towards time and we have some students who have obligations at 4:30. But what cap on craziness of ideas are you as open to?
Well, I think from the bigger picture, we just have to be safe. I mean, I think that is probably the main thing. It's a tough environment, the streets, and so we have to figure out how, whatever we do, we want to make sure that people are safe and they can live another day to enjoy our fair city.
Yeah, I guess the other limitation is it's always costs, right? So how we can realistically implement these solutions.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not going to have a spot on the Super Bowl.
So practical, innovative, and safe to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Well, I will. Are there any last burning questions for our co-host? This is the last call right now. All right. So we are good. Thank you all for joining today. Again, this content can be found in the actual program for City of San Leandro Engineering and Transportation. This podcast provides context on the project scope. And there will be some additional content that the City of San Leandro here will be developing in terms of 5-minute video vlogs to go into more clarity on any specific piece. So thank you all for joining, and you can stick around for a little bit for those who are here. And we're going to